It's the Jack and Joe Show. Welcome along to the YouTube show, the podcast as well. Joe Sansom alongside me, and we spoke 2 weeks ago. Very little's changed in those 2 weeks. I'm exasperated. You're exasperated. How are you?
Aside from that, I'm really well. But I can't pretend that I'm not a bit gutted about what we're speaking about today versus what we spoke about 2 weeks ago. It's worth noting we're going to be catching up every week now that the transfer season hopefully heats up. But to this point, it has been the most tepid, lukewarm as an absolute overstatement, bathwater that I've ever seen in my life. There's been nothing to talk about. We had a few links just after we recorded a few weeks ago, and I thought, is it heating up? But the main news, Jack, is the fact that since we last spoke, obviously, and people have already spoken about it, so we won't speak about it too much, is that the king has stayed at Fulham, Kenny Tete. We spent basically the whole video saying how gutted we were to lose him. Well, luckily we're not. That is one positive, is that we have kept our first choice right back, and that's fantastic news. He's a pivotal part of the squad, and I can't tell you how hot my head would be if we'd have lost him on a free and we still hadn't made any progress in the window. We were both of the opinion that it was going to be quite hard to find someone to be as good as him, especially defensively. There's other attacking options like Bellanova that were mentioned that I'm sure would have been great. But I do admit that my knowledge of sort of Italian football is not the best. I won't pretend it is. That being said, Jack, where are we at? What's going on?
I honestly, I don't know. It's very strange. I wrote a piece for my Patreon yesterday about how Fulham are famously slow at everything. In terms of, you look back at the last 2 summers and the signings that we made. 26th of July was the first signing of Ryan Sessegnon. The year before, 25th of July was Raul Jimenez. And I want to put something to you, which is sort of why this summer has got under my skin and been frustrating compared to all other the summers previously, once we've been in the Premier League. So I can probably vouch that the summer we were promoted into the Premier League, so going into 22-23, I think we were all sort of caught up in the hysteria and the euphoria of promotion. And obviously, you're concerned and you want to get players in. We're linked with Paulinho, Pereira. And I think once one came in, Diop, and they all sort of snowballed, and it was that sort of, well, we're just happy to be here sort of thing. And then, so that was what that summer for me was, just pure excitement. And of course, we were really distracted by the Manuel Solomon saga, which seemed to take an age, and we knew about that since like April, and then it still dragged on. That in itself was ludicrous. However, we got the deal done somehow, and he's now back at Spurs, so he's gone to Spurs. The second summer, we were distracted with, oh my word, like every day it was Mitrovic links, it was Silva links, Willian. There wasn't any Paulinho, I don't think, but there was just so many horrible rumours, where Fulham were looking like they were going to be torn apart. Last summer, we were distracted by the Euros, and because England did so well and got all the way to the final, not many people were thinking about Fulham, talking about Fulham. I was definitely thinking and talking about Fulham because that's when I launched into my new job. So I was very focused on Fulham, but also at the same time, we were at the Prince of Wales every 3 days watching England score some magnificent goals and having some magnificent evenings. And suddenly I was just like, oh, well, Fulham will just come later whenever the Euros is done. And this summer, Club World Cup, don't care. Just do not care about it whatsoever. It's not been distracting you. It's not been distracting me. It's full sole focus on Fulham. And it's been, I wouldn't say it's been miserable. I would say it's been incredibly frustrating as someone who now is practicing as a journalist, just covering Fulham FC. It's been a very sorry summer for me so far. There's been some nice bits of info. There's been some nice bits that I've managed to get and put out, but they haven't come to any fruition yet. Nothing's happened. Obviously, Tete staying is fantastic. It really is good news. But the dopamine that I've got this summer has just been retaining a player that we had last season. Joe, I know you went on a bit of a furious rant on or rant, sorry, I should say, on Twitter last night. I think it has reached. Can I ask you a question? So these 26th of July, 25th of July first signings, does that in your mind make you feel like it's okay because it's only the 9th of July? Or is it a case of why on earth do we leave it this late to get going?
Second one, 100%. I mean, last summer, the first signing was obviously Sessegnon, which came basically out of nowhere. And that was fantastic because that was obviously homecoming news. It came at around the same time that obviously we were getting the Smith Rowe end of that saga as well, because we'd had that was being talked about for the whole of June. And also basically the first half of July. That was something that was in the pipeline. It seemed to be us or Palace, and we were like, okay, something is gonna happen, something's gonna give here, and it did. And the year before, like you say, it was the Jimenez signing that was first, and swiftly followed by Bassi. Both of those sort of broke on the same weekend that was just after Silverstade. So it sort of felt like for both of those years, I can sort of get it. Like you say, I can sort of get it. And the year before that, we were a bit quicker. With Polinia and with talks for Pereira and with talks for Leno and all of that thing. Solomon saga, like you say, and Babu came in before the first game. But it does just feel like this year there is zero excuse. I dug up one of your tweets. I'm not digging you out. I'm digging out the board because Marco Silva said that they knew what they needed to do, and that was in May. But it sounds like they needed to know what to do since January. I mean, the January window was wasted, and the sort of thinking was, okay, well, it's a January window. It's tougher. Let's see what they can do in the summer. And the answer has been absolutely niche so far, unfortunately. I mean, we had that flurry of links, like you say, and maybe we'll come on to a couple of them and discuss, because that's all we've got to go off. But it does feel like we need a few fine tunings to our squad. We don't need a huge overhaul, but the ceiling of our squad needs to be raised, and so does the floor. So we need better depth to come off the bench. That's something that we saw a few times last season where we just couldn't really match some of those teams around us. And also better quality in certain positions, like on the wing and in midfield. More goals are needed. I don't want to suddenly pretend that everything was rosy last season, because as good as it was, there were some really, really frustrating moments which could have been helped by having better squad depth. And the example that I'll give is the Brighton game in March. We had a bit of an injury crisis going into that game. We also had Lukic suspended. We had basically no depth. And that was really, really unfortunate. And Brighton won that game because in the second half, they could pin us back. They had better depth off the bench. They could bring on all these players and keep the intensity up, and we couldn't. And what I would say to anyone that is not complaining, is think about who we're playing opening game, Brighton. They have improved in the transfer market. I think they've already signed 4 players, potentially just 3. A young striker from Greece, a new left back, a new centre back, and potentially another centre back, which is why I'm thinking there's 4. So they've made some big signings, all of which should improve minimum their bench. And we haven't. And don't get me wrong, I'm absolutely delighted to keep Tete. I was buzzing. That is obviously the best news we've had all summer in terms of football. And I was delighted with it. But that being said, we shouldn't have been in that position anyway. We shouldn't have been losing him on a free to a team that finished below us last season and obviously has got aspirational targets for this season, all of that, new stadium, fine. We shouldn't have been losing him. And we came very close to. We still haven't signed our club captain to a new deal. And whether you think he should or shouldn't get a new deal, I think is actually irrelevant to this conversation. What shouldn't be happening is at the time of recording, 9 days have gone past where he's technically a free agent and nothing has happened. And I know that one other fan base complaining about this and in a really similar position actually is Wolves, where Nelson Semedo is their club captain and is out of contract. And they're in a situation where he probably isn't going to sign, but nothing's confirmed. They're the only fan base that I think are in a similar position where there's just so little comms. And that's sort of what's frustrating me. There's nothing. And don't get me wrong, I'm not expecting an update every day from Fulham saying, we're still talking to Kearney. That's not what I'm expecting. But we should have had something where it's a little bit clearer in terms of Kearney has been offered a new contract, it's on the table, and he is having a think about his future. And these are the things that are going on, because I felt like it was a bit awkward when it was the anniversary of his signing. I felt like it was a bit awkward with a few of the young players as well. Like, we don't know what's going on with Luc de Fougerolles. Obviously, you tweeted that great news that he looks like he's hopefully signing a new deal. but the lack of comms from the club is what is getting on my nerves a bit, because I don't feel like everything's in hand, and it might be, but I don't feel like it is. I personally am not as bothered with things like the kit and stuff like that. I don't mind as much. Will I like to see the new kit? Yeah, but I'm far more concerned about what would be going on with our squad for the opening day, because we've got about 5 weeks now before the Brighton game, and that's a big game. It's a really big game. Silva would have said what he wanted for pre-season. He'd have said what he wanted for game one. I remember that last season, we weren't prepared for that Man United game. We didn't have the players that we wanted. We did have Smith Rowe. I remember we had Sessegnon and Cuenca on the bench as well, but we didn't have that starting centre-back that we wanted. We didn't have Sander Berge that we wanted. And oh my goodness, what a difference those guys would have made at Old Trafford opening day. When we finally got business done early a couple of years ago, in the summer of 22-23, we started well. We started like a house on fire. Even the games that we lost, we were really running the teams close, like Arsenal, like Tottenham, even in terms of scoreline. It was a bit of one-sided game, but we ran them close. Just massively, massively frustrated right now, and hoping that there will be some news soon. I can't say that I don't have Fabrizio and Ornstein's tweet notifications on, and every time I see that little siren emoji, I think, oh, is it Fulham related? And it's not, every single time. Apart from once when I missed it because I was making dinner when it was David Ornstein about Romulo, and that was just never followed up.
And that's the strange thing. We spoke about it before we came on air, that usually when you have an Ornstein tweet initially about interest, i.e. Smith Rowe or any other player that's sort of been linked to any club, you always get some sort of follow-up. And we actually said it, we were like, oh, this is great, because then surely we'll get a follow-up. And it just hasn't happened. And this was a tweet that came out nearly 2 weeks ago. I think nearly 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks tomorrow at the time of filming.
Hell.
So the Thursday evening.
I know for a fact that there is a long list of striker targets. I reckon we're probably playing the field and having a look, but the way the tweet was structured, saying that the initial bid was rejected and this is what they want, I was expecting, well, if this is a striker we really want to get, there's the price tag and put it on the table because we can afford it. We've had, I don't know whether we're looking at someone like Callum Wilson, or I don't know whether we're looking at someone like Dominic Calvert-Lewin on a free, just to bring in a cheaper option and still a capable option, especially at Premier League level. It just feels very, very strange. Pepe, it was a situation where they wanted 50 million and we weren't going to pay that. So that's dead and buried. Zinchenko looked like a really cool target that made so much sense, can play left back and centre mid, would fill a couple of voids for us. Makes a lot of sense. Nelson coming back makes so much sense. A player who really did shine when he got the opportunity, but then was just hampered by injuries. And there's a couple more. I mean, Rocco Wrights. I broke the initial story, Plettenberg backed it up, and I was like, okay, here we go. And nothing's happened since. And that's the strangest thing about it is it's that usually when you get linked with players in the summer, you get, whether it's Fabrizio Romano, David Ornstein, Florian Plettenberg, whoever it is, you'll get like a sequence and a thread of updates on how the deal is going. And we've had no updates on any deals of how they're going. And on paper, it looks like we're in talks with nobody, because nothing's happened. And it's okay, fine. I can understand the club, or any club, are very, very good at keeping things under wraps. In fact, Fulham are very good at keeping things under wraps because of last summer and what you mentioned when we were last on this show, and how things progressed and things were broken at a very late stage. And that probably will happen again this summer. But to not hear any developments about 5 or 6 players who we've been linked with is utterly baffling. And I don't think I've ever remembered anything happening like this ever before. We always got an update. We always got an update from someone who has some information, because I can't believe it. I can't believe it. Look, it's obviously been really frustrating. We're going out to Portugal on July 25th. and we
To play
still
who, by
don't.
the way?
Well, it's Nottingham Forest, and Vitor de Guimaraes playing Nottingham Forest in pre-season has spun my head. I don't necessarily. I'm not a massive fan of it. There, but the thing is, I've kept an eye on Nottingham Forest's communications as well, and they haven't announced any Algarve pre-season stuff. I know that they've got a couple of friendlies. I think one against Birmingham and one at the City Ground against someone. I'm not sure, maybe even two. We're a month away today from the Frankfurt game. We're going to be back at the Cottage. I'm sure you might go, and I'm sure I'll be there as well. And that was, a couple of years ago when we played Hoffenheim at Craven Cottage and Calvin Bassey played. I was like, oh my God, we've got a player on our hands here. Thus proved to be a really good player. And right now, I said to you yesterday, which literally made you so mad. I said, if we, our starting 11 at Brighton is going to be Leno, Tete, Anderson, Bassey, Robinson, Berger, Lukic, Smith Rowe, Wilson, Iwobi, Rodrigo Muniz. And it's a good 11, but...
By the way, that team is fine. It's just like, have 6 months passed since we last played them? It's ridiculous. Oh, it's so frustrating.
Yeah. Look, we have 2 strikers on the book right now. I was even surprised of seeing Devin Tansom going out on loan so quickly, given that Castanha's not fit yet either. I would imagine that he was going to go to Portugal, but hey, look, Chesterfield wanted him back. He probably wanted to go, and it's a deal that makes sense. I hope that Castanha's in a good shape. Maybe he is ready to come back for pre-season. Maybe he is. He's ahead of his schedule in terms of recovery. Same with Anthony Robinson, who's obviously had surgery as well. Joe, we've hit the 18-minute mark, and there's sod all to talk about at this moment in time. My thinking is that as we're recording today on Wednesday, yesterday the club tweeted about the new champagne that's going to be served at the Riverside stand. Now or the Fulham Pier, that caused a huge stir from Fulham fans because they're getting impatient, they're getting frustrated, and then they were like, okay, so this is just my thinking. I'm thinking, okay, they're going to put out something. They're thinking we want to put out something tomorrow that's going to be at least get the fans a little bit more excited. And they put out the training wear, which I have seen and everyone else has seen on the website, and people were posting it on the day that we had a picnic on the park because people were walking past the club store. I've seen it in real life when I've been down the Cottage. I mean, it's not great. Maybe that new kit doesn't bother me as much as it used to, and I think it might be a sponsorship issue. It could be a sleeve sponsor issue. There's so many things that can happen with a kit, and there's so many little bits of due diligence you need to do. And one other club, I know you mentioned Wolves earlier, but West Ham fans are furious. West Ham fans are furious. They're already in pre-season.
Big work to do this summer. Like, at least we've got a squad that is very, very capable. I feel
they know they're losing Kudos.
Yeah,
and maybe
exactly.
Paquetá. And they are absolutely furious. Potter wanted players in by the start of pre-season. That hasn't happened. Silva will want players in for the start of pre-season. That hasn't happened. And my final point in this sort of ranty sort of segment is that, and I put this in my piece yesterday, is that 7 clubs are not in pre-season right now in the Premier League. Chelsea and Man City, understandably, are still at the Club World Cup, basically. Liverpool, Spurs, and Palace, all teams who have won competitions last season, so trophies, so maybe they're allowed a bit more time off. Arsenal and Fulham. Arsenal maybe played Champions League, but football. But why we offer another week and not back until Sunday, Monday, compared to other Premier League teams? That doesn't make sense.
It makes zero sense. And you think that we'd want to be back and raring to go. We had a season that was great, but had a frustrating ending. And it feels like those other teams that you mentioned, they're having time off for a reason, right? Either to recover from big schedules that they had, where they had loads of extra competitions and finals that were later on in the season, or equally as a reward. Also, maybe had more players that had been away at I'm trying to think back to last summer, maybe at the Euros, and wanting a slightly longer break this time because they haven't had a break in a while. All these things. It feels like we're just off it. The whole club right now is just a little bit off the pace, and we need to realise that we've got a good chance of getting in Europe next season. If we have a good window, I mean, let's face it, there's 2 teams above us that have been stripped apart in Brentford and Bournemouth. They both finished above us last season. Yeah. As of right now, we're in a better position than both of those. But the other teams like Brighton and I don't know, even Newcastle now getting Elanga from Forest. It feels like they're strengthening. And Forest's target to replace Elanga is Bakayoko, who's a really exciting signing. It just feels a little bit, there you go. That was a very anti-Ali Mac bark there. Apologies, headphone users. But in all honesty, I get what he's saying. I'm really frustrated as well.
Another point to make is that Raul Jimenez, who has had a brilliant Gold Cup, obviously only played on Sunday, scored. He'll need some more recovery time before he comes back to pre-season, which means because of Osman going to Celtic, we're going to turn up to pre-season with one striker. I know we have two on the books. Raul will have an extra week. I think Defugros will have an extra week. Ridgen might have an extra week because of Josh King might have an extra week because they all played in international competitions. And yeah, we have one striker. And like, imagine if like Muniz pulled up in training, like it'd be absolute disaster.
And also, Jack, like you were saying earlier, with Tanton going on loan, if Tete was to pull it up and Castagne's not back, what would happen there? We've got no one else that can play right back as a normal position.
I obviously, I'm a fan of the club. But I'm also like trying to transition to more professional. I'm just trying to be more professional all the time because you know that comes across well. But it is difficult in times like this. Obviously, you know, like I said earlier, the European Championships was a great distraction last year because it was fun, and England did so well. But when we've had a summer where Wimbledon tennis, I've watched a bit of. Obviously, that's quite fun. But like, I am a football fan. You're a football fan. I'm not getting my football fix, and I haven't had a football fix since Manchester City at home or the Champions League final. Maybe I don't even know if that was the same weekend. I can't remember, but it just feels very empty. And I'm seeing all these clubs, not even in the Premier League and the Championship, and League One and League Two, being linked and doing their signings and their kits and everything. And it's like Fulham don't exist. It's like we don't exist. We're not even. We're not even doing the normal summer things that normal clubs do in the summer. The only thing we've had this summer so far, which has got me excited, is Tete and the fixtures. And the fixtures have to happen.
Yeah, the fixtures were inevitable. And the fixtures came out, nearly a month ago now. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, who are we going to have starting at the Amex? The answer is same group as last time. And don't get me wrong, they're a good group. They're a good group of players. And I understand that it's small changes that need to be made to the starting 11 and we need a bit more depth. But ultimately, it just feels like we're just too slow off the mark again. And I feel like that we're going to regret it because we had a slow January and I almost thought, well, we can accept that if we go big in the summer. And even the players we were linked to in January, like Chukwueze, for example, I feel it weird that we haven't revisited that, or at least to public knowledge, we haven't revisited that because we clearly knew we needed another winger. Now we've lost Willian as well. Nelson's gone back. It means even more so we need another winger, and it feels like we haven't addressed that position yet.
Yeah, look, I think Wayne's upset. You're upset. I'm definitely frustrated. I'd be amazed if we're sat here in a week's time and we don't have anything new to talk about. I really hope that's the case. My final thought is, before we wrap up in this incredibly short podcast, because what else is there to talk about? What on earth is Marcus Silva thinking right now? Like, what on earth do you think is going through his mind?
Frustration, and also, here we go again. In my opinion, it's the same the last two windows, and I don't think it's acceptable. Right?
And Wayne thinks the same. I mean, it's
apologies all.
No, I think yeah, it's a difficult. I'm enjoying my life. It's not like and I'm sure you're enjoying yours as well. We have other things that distract us, and obviously, family and friends, and given I said this the other day actually on Patreon. Given everything that happened last week with Diogo Jota, like maybe this stuff isn't important. It isn't important. And it really did for, when the news broke, I just thought, God, everything seems a bit irrelevant now. Like this is life and death we're talking about. And, it did make me think twice about, complaining about something that is just, it's not that important. Like this is not that important in the grand scheme of things. We've just seen an incredibly talented footballer, two incredibly talented footballers lose their lives in a horrendous accident. and and it's unbelievable how quickly life sort of just moved on. And that is not me being insensitive. I'm just basically saying that in the same day that this happened, Fabrizio Romano was up to his old tricks and just sort of carry on tweeting transfer news. And it was just like, God, football is just moving all the time. And even when something that is horrendous and tragic happens, it stands still for only a few hours because we're in a very transitional period of the year.
Even
And
his
just
ex-teammates,
incredible.
Jack, they were playing like a couple of days later at the Club World Cup. I felt awful for them, seeing how upset they were, obviously.
Yeah, Ruben Neves and players like that, Pedro Neto. And obviously we'll end it on that somber note, and our hearts go out to Liverpool, Diogo Jota and Andre Silva's family, because it was just horrific, and it makes everything we've talked about today feel completely irrelevant. And look, we care about our clubs, we care about, and that's the thing, the reason it got the reaction it did is because we feel like we know these people, we see them every week, we pay money and travel the length of the country and the world to watch these players, and they do feel like part of our lives more than anyone else, and more, as on par with like family and friends. And it was just horrific. And I just hope that, on that opening night where Liverpool play Bournemouth, which seems very poignant now, hopefully that I'm sure Liverpool will do an excellent job of commemorating him, as they already have done. Joe Sansom, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks, everyone, for watching, listening. Like Jack said, I mean, it does put everything in perspective. As much as things like this frustrate me, and sometimes I even enjoy moaning about them, I think. I'll be honest. I think it gives me something to do. But hopefully we do, from Fulham perspective, get some news soon, and it starts to become an exciting summer.
Absolutely. Guys, we will see you next week. Hopefully we have something to talk about in terms of new news, some new rumours. I'm certainly going to do my utmost to keep my ear on the ground and post anything that I feel is relevant or a goer. So keep your eyes and ears peeled. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we'll see you next week.